Everyone, welcome back to Truth Noir. We're getting back into normal episodes. We just got done doing the Constitution, where we took a couple month and a half to read the whole thing all the way through, so stay tuned for that. And so in getting back to normal weird stuff that we do, joined once again by our old friend Steve Mashni, biblical scholar and journalist and sterling musician, as he's going to show you again for now the second time on the show. We actually had a pretty sensitive topic to talk about tonight, something that doesn't get a lot of media coverage, but that is quite serious and is probably in a very real sense should be considered as one of the great genocides of our time. And so Steve here has interviewed and knows of some people that have been working to help assuage this situation, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, we want to lead off with some music before we get into the really awful, depressing mess of this topic. So here's Steve Mashni with some music for you.
The song, I wrote this song actually for a friend of mine who lives in the Gaza Strip, and he had a pretty harrowing situation and stuff, but he survived it. And I wrote this song, but I would like to dedicate it to the people of Iraq, the Yazidis and the Christians who've been persecuted there. So, called "There's a Reason Why." There's a reason why we're all alive. There's a reason why. There's a reason why we didn't die. There's a reason why. There's a reason why you're hearing this song. There's a reason why. There's a reason why he's there all along. There's a reason why. There's a man on a tree on a hill called Calvary, and he gave what he could give so that we might live. There's a heavenly love from the Father up above, and he did what he could do, trying to get through, to get through to you.
Oh, thank you for that, Steve. Always a pleasure hearing you play.
Oh, thanks.
So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the crux to this episode. We're talking about the Yazidis.
The Yazidis, yes.
And the situation that they are dealing with right now, have been dealing with for quite some time,
Right.
and some people that you know personally that have been trying to help them and putting that story out there,
Right.
and actually making a fair amount of progress.
Yes, it's been, I have a friend of mine, his name is Hazem, and he was a televangelist before, on TBN and stuff, but now he's really kind of dedicated himself to more human rights focus, and he has been to Iraq several times, and he's actually making a movie, and it's a movie called Extreme Good, and it's about, some of the stuff that's happened over there. There's so much evil, there's so much, evil that we can't even imagine, stuff that it just doesn't even enter the psyche. It's so evil.
Yeah, and even for all of the coverage that there is, it seems, the more and more you hear about this stuff that is not getting reported, the stuff that is getting reported really only scratches the surface.
Right. And, there's he has just done a great job, recording, and the movie should be out this year, 2016, and if people would like to find out more about it, there is a website called extremegood.com. That's just extremegood.com, and it has information about the people that we'll be talking about tonight, as well as, some of the interviews, because they were actually able to bring there's a particular girl, her name is Bazi. She's a young girl, 20 years old. She's a Yazidi, and, they kidnapped her, and along with her village, killed all the men in the village. Like 600 men they killed, and then they took the women hostage, and they actually started take them to slave markets where they actually sell them for sex slaves.
Right.
And the women are sold for between $10 and $40. Yeah.
Yeah, this is stuff that you hear stories about this. You're like, surely this is a story about the Middle Ages. That stuff doesn't happen anymore. But
I tell you, well, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about the ISIS that they really believe that as part of their apocalypse. We've talked a lot about biblical prophecy, end-time prophecy. Well, there is the Islamic end-time prophecy, apocalyptic, too. And ISIS, with their extremist view, they believe that the return of slavery is one of the signs of the end. And so, they're trying to hasten the end, and there's a huge apocalyptic focus in their theology and in what they're doing. And so, anyway, what happened is that my friend Hazem, he brought some of the Yazidis here, and this particular girl, Bazi, that I was telling you about, you can see her on the Extreme Good website. You could see her telling her story about what happened to her. And it was an interview with Christiane Amanpour, and she was just telling about the fact that it was an American. The man who bought her was an American, and he's called Abdullah al-Amriki, which means the American. And she said he
recognize the last part.
The Amriki. He says he didn't speak hardly any Arabic. He's very broken Arabic, and he's married, has kids. He showed her some of the pictures of his kids and family and his wife.
Grisly. While
raping her like 5 times a day, every time, and this was in the New York Times too. There was a huge article in the New York Times about it, and it said, he would pray, rape her, and then pray afterwards also. And then one time she asked him, she says, why are you doing this to me? And he says, because you're an infidel and you won't convert to Islam unless I do this. He literally said that to her, and you just look, you go, what's going on here? What kind of a mindset has been unleashed there?
Right. Surely there was a miscommunication from the book to the psyche or something.
Yeah, and So anyway, what happened with this girl is that they actually brought her to the U.S. and she actually testified in front of the United Nations Women's Peace. I'm not sure exactly what it was called, but it's a women's peace group that's in the United Nations.
Okay.
She testified there, told what happened to her, and they also went to the U.S. Congress, and they're trying to get the Congress to consider the crimes of these ISIS fighters to be crimes against humanity, which elevates it to a higher level. So, and they've actually had some success and some response from Congress about doing that. And so, there's been some, I'd say, phenomenal progress to try to help, ease what is still a very miserable and, situation.
Yeah, because I remember hearing about this a couple years ago, and it was very brief, and it was something to do with putting boots on the ground to try to help these people that were getting massacred by ISIS, and then it disappeared.
Yeah.
And so and a lot of times when that happens, people are like, oh well, they must have solved that problem.
Right.
And when in fact quite the opposite seems to be true.
Well, it started in, it was around September of 2014 when, ISIS, was primarily made up of a lot of them are ex, soldiers that were in Saddam Hussein's army, and many of them, they were there, for quite a while, but they really came on the scene around August 2014. And that's when they really attacked some of the Yazidi, city villages. And the big thing that happened was that they attacked this Yazidi village. I believe it was in August of 2014. The Yazidis fled, thousands of them. They fled to a mountain called Mount Sinjar. And they were actually up there hiding. And then ISIS, they did surrounded them, and that was that was where, America took note,
Right.
And then America started dropping humanitarian aid, blankets, food, and stuff like that. And so that was really where ISIS, coming out, where people began to know who they are.
And so now geographically, whereabouts are these people indigenous, or do they tend to live in a certain area, or are they scattered throughout Iraq and have?
There's a huge population within Iraq. There's about 1 million of them. In Iraq. There's some in Syria, but the primary location is in Iraq, and they have their religious center there and near Kurdistan. It's close to Kurdistan, and
so now this is up in the north.
Yes, in the northern part of Iraq, yeah. And I had a friend of mine, his name is Thammer, he lives there. And he's actually involved with rescuing some of these girls because, what ISIS did, they took over all these, Yazidi towns. And what they would do with the men is usually they would just kill them. They would just tell them, take them on a bus like they were taking them somewhere, and they would just kill them. Quite often they would also take the older women and kill them as well.
Right.
But then they would divide the girls into, the younger girls and the married girls and stuff like that, and they would take them to slave markets. Literally, I read about it in the New York Times. They actually had these warehouses where they were selling these women.
Right.
Between $10 and $40. And what's happened, there's thousands of girls that were kidnapped, and what's happened now, some of them are escaping. And when they escape, they usually call my friend Thammer, who was there, and there's some other people as well. They call them and, say, can you help us? Can you meet us? And there's a guy whose picture we're going to show in a second.
Sure.
He said that his phone is nonstop. Nonstop, he's getting calls from people who are trying to escape, trying to get away from ISIS.
Right,
And
yeah, I can imagine.
yes, so it's a horrific situation. If I just tell you a little bit about why the Yazidis have been, I mean, the Christians have also been horribly persecuted. And I'm wearing this shirt right in here, and the reason I'm wearing this shirt is because this is what ISIS, they used to go to the houses of the Christians, and they would paint this letter on the houses of the Christians in Mosul, and what they're saying by doing that, they're telling, their fighters and stuff that you can take over this house, and they gave the Christians 3 choices. You convert to Islam, or you be killed, or you pay a infidel tax. It's an exorbitant amount. And what that did is that it just emptied out the Christians. The Christians just fled from Mosul. They left. And
Yeah.
so anyway, but this is the letter N. It's Noon in Arabic, and what the Noon means in the Quran, Christians are called the Nasara. Nasara coming from the word Nazareth. Followers of the Nazarene.
Okay,
so that's where the N comes in. So, and that's why I'm wearing this shirt. So, but anyway,
and people, because this story doesn't get any coverage anywhere, people tend to scoff when you call something a genocide. It usually has to encompass a world war or something until people start acknowledging these things as they are. But, when you start branding people and their homes, and you start taking all the people of a village, on a bus trip that they never come back from, these are the way genocides start.
Yeah.
And, and obviously it's horrible to hear about, but it's one of those things that is eminently important, because these things shouldn't be going on anywhere. And so,
well, the guy that I interviewed, his name is Thamit. He came. I have a program, and it's in Arabic, and I interviewed him on it. And I actually wanted to bring him here, but he was leaving.
We were talking about interrupting doing a break from the Constitution reading.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't work out. I would have loved to have had him on and talked to him. And
hopefully, maybe in the future, he speaks very good English. And but one thing he told me that kind of shocked me, just because I don't know these things. He told me that this current genocide is the 74th genocide in the history of the Yazidi people. They've got it documented. There's been 74 genocides against them, in history.
Now, we were talking before the show, and this is a very ancient group of people.
Yes.
These people actually predate Christianity itself.
And Islam, of course. Yeah. So yeah, they're this is a important point that you brought up here, because this is why they're being treated a little bit worse than the Christians. Now, the Christians are treated terribly. There's none left in Mosul. They've fled. Many of the Christians, thousands, crucified, killed. I mean, it's been horrible too. Yeah. But the Yazidis, the Christians have just a hair of a notch above the Yazidis, because they're considered in the Quran people of the book, meaning of the gospel or the Torah, to where the Jews and the Christians have just a tiny bit of a protected status, more than the others. They still get killed, they still get, all that. But with the Yazidis, they don't get the 3 options. You see, with the Christians, you get the 3 options. You convert to Islam, you get killed, or you pay the infidel tax. The Yazidis don't get that, because they're not considered people of the book. They're just considered infidels.
Right.
So they are just, you kill the men, take the men, and then
do whatever you want with them.
Sell the women.
Yeah.
And so, and let me just say one thing about the Yazidi religion. It is actually a monotheistic religion. They believe in one God, but their God is called Melek Taus, and it's actually like a peacock god, and so and they actually believe that this God is both good and bad. You got both the good and bad in this God, like Satan and God, together. And so because of that, a lot of the Muslims say, well, a lot of people, not just the Muslims, say that they are Satan worshipers because they are also worshiping the bad side, of Tammuz. They say they don't. That's not the case, And I've been to Iraq several times myself, and I actually went to their temple in the Kurdish area, and they explained a little bit to me. They said that they don't worship Satan, but ISIS considers that they do worship Satan, and that takes any kind of protection.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and let me just say some of the other massacres of them in 1640, the Ottomans had one of the genocides against them. And in 1892, there was a man named Abdul Hamid who also had a genocide against them. I think that was, and then, with there's just so many, genocides that happen against those people, like the Assyrians.
When you're able to count 74 in your collective history,
yes.
That's
and document them with the names,
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they have the names of the people that and so, but I had the chance to talk with this guy, and he was telling me about how some of the girls. He told me this one story. It just broke my heart. This one girl, she was taken, when they they killed all the men in the village, and they took these Yazidi girls. And there's this one Yazidi girl, and there's actually two Yazidi girls that were taken by this one man. He bought them for like $40 or something and took them home. Right. And she was like 14 years old, and he would rape her. And then after he'd rape her, she said that she begged him not to rape the other girl. She said, "No, just rape me. Just rape me instead. Don't rape that other girl," because she didn't want to hurt that other girl.
Right.
The other girl to be hurt, and it just, and it makes you think, I mean, like when I think about the name of the website, Extreme Good, you just the wonderful thing, that against the gross darkness of what ISIS is doing, you see these amazing stories of human love and compassion, and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but another thing about this girl, this is what the ISIS guys would do for them, these girls, is that they would give them water to drink, and they would give them rice, but in the rice they would put little pieces of glass, so that they would eat it, and they'd have the glass going through their system, and in the water, what they would do, they would take like some of the diapers, and they would squeeze it out into the water.
Like just absolutely terrible.
Just humiliation, just to humiliate. But there's this girl, and the girl said this, who was interviewed. She said they also drugged us. They also drugged us because we were always dizzy. But what they start doing is they start giving these girls these pills, and they say they're like vitamin pills. But she realized that when she took them, that it made her sleepy. So what she did is she started saving the pills, and she saved a bunch of the pills. And then he called her to make tea for him one day, and so she made the tea, and she put all the pills in it. He passed out, and she ran away.
Right.
So you got these amazing stories.
Resourceful, I guess you have to be in that situation.
Yes, and there are girls that have ran away, over 2,000, have run away, and when they come back, they have been so traumatized. They've been so traumatized, and they got, first of all, they got to just get the basic things of food, and and so these guys, there's these associations that, mostly Yazidi men and women, who, put together these organizations to help to bring them food, clothes, help them get on their feet, and then also, little by little, they have. I kind of got the impression that haven't done this very much yet, but they're needing to do it more, which is to have more counseling for them as well, to recover from the, these traumatic events that, I mean, these girls, when they get set free, that's a great thing. They got free. But then when they go back to their village, all their brothers and fathers and husbands have been murdered.
Yeah, it's just stuff you can't even imagine.
You can't imagine it, man. It's just unbelievable. It's just heartbreaking, and so my friend Thamid, I did the interview with him, and it's, I kind of feel like, he's kind of come to this place where he just, not just him, but several others, which is, you know what? We don't have time to think about this thing. We don't have time to think about the philosophy of what's happening, why it's happening, or anything like that. We just gotta help these people now. It's so urgent that there's no time to talk about the good and bad of whatever's happened. We have to help these people now, and so I'm just so thankful that that they've been able to bring some light to this situation, and to just like in Congress when this girl Bazi, she spoke in Congress. There was a congressman who just said, "Wow, we've heard about all these atrocities, but now we actually have a face of a human, a person that actually went through this."
Right.
So,
and a personal story of some of these horrors.
Yeah, so, it's so painful, it's so hard, but thank God that something's being done,
Right, absolutely.
Yeah,
so a little bit more about this movie. When is it going to see any kind of
Actually, it's funny is that on my show with this Arabic station, it's so hokey sometimes, but they made an intro for my show.
Started the slideshow?
Okay.
So
yeah,
let's go ahead and see some of the faces that are involved in this.
Okay.
Who are we looking at here?
Okay, these are a couple of, actually these boys are Christians, and they were told you have to convert, and they said no, we won't, and they didn't, and they're now living in we'll have a picture of the cardboard city that they live in now. So
okay,
we have a picture later here. Okay, this is the guy on the left. This is Hazem. This is he's from Jerusalem. He's a Palestinian, and he's a Christian, and he's the one who's making the movie, and he's the one who's really spearheading, and the one he's been to Iraq several times, and he there he's talking with the Yazidi man. They're in the refugee.
It looks like kind of a tent city or.
Well, it's actually like it's like we have a picture of it actually. Oh, okay. It's a big cardboard box.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it looks like there's some. Okay, now this guy right here is an absolute hero, and I just want to make sure I say his name. I'm going to say it wrong anyway, but his name is Kheder Domle. Kheder Domle. This guy is such an awesome, amazing hero. He's the one who gets all the calls from all these girls.
Okay, so he's out there doing all the footwork
he's on the ground, and he has rescued, so many of the girls and brought them, after they flee, because they're captive, but they are able to run away sometimes. When they flee, he takes them, he puts them in the center, gets some food, gets some counseling and stuff like that, like I said. And but this guy, he has gone he was on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC. He also testified before the UN and Congress, just phenomenal man. My friend that I interviewed on my program, his name is Thamer. He works with him. Okay. And so they together, are doing this, amazing work.
Yeah, it sounds like a fantastic project.
Just phenomenal, beyond anything we can imagine, and thank God for him, for he says his phone is ringing nonstop,
Yeah, well, hopefully it continues to do so.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the girls that was rescued. I don't have too many details about her, but she suffered a lot, she's one of the Yazidi women here, so. Okay, again, there's Hazem. Hazem is on the right. He's talking with, these are some of the men who are also helping with some of the humanitarian relief work that's being done there. Okay, these are a couple of other men, and these guys, yeah, it's an amazing story.
Is this in Palestine or?
No. This is in Iraq.
Okay.
This is in Iraq. Yeah. This is these guys are Christian, and they escaped, to Kurdistan, and they were just. I mean, they were describing how they just lost everything, and the thing that Hazan, when he was talking about them, I remember him saying, just how strong their faith was in spite of the great, just unbelievable devastation that they happened. Yeah. They were one of the ones, I believe, at their house, they came and they drew this in on their house, threatened them, and so they, they fled to Kurdistan. So, and okay, these are a couple other guys. Oh, those are the same two guys there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is a woman who had members of her family were killed, and she is a Christian. And she just unbelievable story, of what happened to her, with her family and stuff. But she's fled also to Kurdistan, to Erbil.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing this film when it's done.
It's going to be I'm so excited about it. Now, this is in the church. There's a church, several churches there in Erbil. And I believe this is a church that I've ministered in. I've been to Iraq 5 times, but between 2003 and 2010, I'm pretty sure I ministered at that church because I remember that, the paneling in the back there.
Okay.
But that's where one of the centers where they're talking to the aid workers. So.
Oh,
okay.
Got turned sideways.
And sideways, but that's a nun in the middle, and she's just done an amazing work. Both her and that guy there just have done so much to help, the Christians who have been fleeing from ISIS in Mosul. And one thing about the Christians in Mosul, is that Mosul is a very significant city because, that was the biggest city that ISIS took. It was the second biggest city in Iraq. They took it. When they took it, it's like taking over New York, the second biggest, or Los Angeles, because that's the second biggest city in the U.S. It's a huge thing for the Iraqis. But Mosul is also very important. It's also a biblical city because it's the city of Nineveh in the Bible. It's where Jonah went. Right. And there's actually 2 books in the Bible dedicated to Nineveh. One is about the destruction of Nineveh, and then I believe it's Amos, and then Jonah. So this is where they're from.
Right. Well, and now present day, it seems like ISIS is trying to.
It's the same. It's the same thing. They were known. They were known for their cruelty. That's why that it was destroyed, because they were so cruel. That's why Jonah didn't want to go there, because they were so violent. It's just like ISIS. And so he didn't want to go there. And then the whale and everything.
Right, yeah.
And so, and to this day, it's like the same thing happening there. It's amazing that city, and right now they're like on the verge of retaking it, because they took back Tikrit, they took back some of the big cities now, the Iraqi government has, and they're looking to take over Mosul. But the thing is, they're just saying that the devastation, there's a very painful thing that happened. And that is that, like, when ISIS came through, like the Christians who were there, and not just the Christian, with the Yazidis said the exact same thing too, is that a lot of the Sunni neighbors sided with ISIS and started betraying the Christians and the Yazidis to ISIS. This happened. Many people have complained about that.
Kind of difficult to come back from that when your neighbors stab you in the back.
Yeah, and so how do you regain the trust to go back home? They're saying that they don't believe Christians are ever going to go back there again to Mosul. And it was they had a huge Christian population there, and the Yazidis. So anyway, this woman right here has also, she's a Christian, and she also, I believe her husband was also killed, and this is inside of the tent, that the UN gave her, Okay, this is like the tents that they gave them. You see, they're made of, or maybe that isn't cardboard. I thought it was cardboard, but actually it looks like it is.
It's like canvas.
Canvas, yeah. That's written in Arabic. It says Yesur Nur al-Alam, Well, it says it in English. Jesus is the light of the world, So, but this is where they're living, in these cities, and that's Hazm right there. This is when he first went there a few years ago. So, okay, this lady in the middle is very important because if you remember, when the Yazidis were stuck on top of the mountain, and ISIS was threatening to kill them, and then she got up in the parliament in Iraq, and she put this tearful, she was crying and bawling, she's Yazidi, bawling, saying to the world, you gotta help us, you gotta do something, and it was such a passionate plea, it was widely broadcast on the media, because of her plea, it got Obama to do something, he got there and he started, sending supplies there. Right. So it was literally her. She was the one that literally motivated, the U.S. to finally do something, So we're back to the top to these kids.
And we are just about out of time, unfortunately.
Oh, man.
But,
I got so much more, man.
Well, Steve, it's always insightful having you on. Thank you for coming on and sharing this, this story, one among many that needs to be told. But I'm glad there is someone, or a growing number of people out there doing something about it. So
thank God.
Please come back on in the future when this film is done.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let you know.
So we can share more information about it. And anyone involved, we'd love to have them on and talk to them.
Okay, if I can.
And, share some more stories with everyone.
Okay, great.
But, I think the kind of passing lesson of the story is, sometimes it does just take one person standing up with a camera and filming, or one person standing up, in the right place at the right time and screaming at someone to do something,
He's gotten, as he's gone over trying to shop the movie, to get somebody to, to buy it or something, he said he's got really good reactions. People saying that this movie is, you really got a good thing going here. And I think it's really going to be helpful to open people's eyes about, what's going on there, these innocent people. So,
I don't have any words for it. I'm just, I'm glad there is, something getting done, and that hopefully there will be less things like this going on in the world in the future. So, that being said, thank you once again. Thank you for your music and your insight. And
by the way, I'm going to start a group, an Arabic group called, this is the joke that every time I try to have a joke, it's called Bawarid Wurud, and that's Arabic for Guns N' Roses. So,
good. Right on. That's all the time we have for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to bring you more about this film and about this story as it develops. And so we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care wherever you go and get there safe.